Well, some big news made today. We start in the Big Ten, probably the biggest news in all of college football, as Penn State has had some of the limitations on its scholarships removed by the NCAA. Of course, the scholarships originally taken away as part of the Jerry Sandusky scandal, but due to the recommendation of former Senator George Mitchell, who is the independent integrity monitor for Penn State, the organization has restored some scholarships for the football program. In explaining the decision, Mitchell said, quote, "While there is more work to be done, Penn State has clearly demonstrated its commitment to restoring integrity in its athletics program. The university has substantially completed the initial implementation of all the free report recommendations and its obligations to the Athletics Integrity Agreement, so relief from the scholarship reductions is warranted and deserved." Now, here's what the decision means in terms of raw numbers. Under the original structure, Penn State was only going to be able to award 15 scholarships per season. They were going to be limited to 65 overall starting next season and continuing over the next 4 years. In other words, they would not have been back to 85 until 2018. Now they can be back to 85 in 2016, can award 20 scholarships starting next academic year. So that's this upcoming recruiting class, and 25 like everyone else the year after. Here's Bill O'Brien reacting today.
I think it's important for our players here that they understand now that, when you do things the right way, you can be rewarded, and I think that's important. I think it's a great life lesson, which we'll continue to try to teach here at Penn State about being resilient and dealing with things in the proper way. I think that's important. I think it's really important for future student athletes that there are going to be opportunities for more people, more football student athletes to come to Penn State and earn a world-class degree and play great football. So I really think it's an important day today for the players here in our program and for future players here at Penn State.
Absolutely huge news for Bill O'Brien. Pat, I want to get your take on this first. What does this ruling today tell us?
It is a big day for Penn State, and it's another duck and cover day for the NCAA, Dave. This was a ruling that I think this is a tacit admission that they didn't get it right the first time, that they overreached. Nobody said that on the teleconference today. They all said that this was something that was going to be up for review anyway, but it was going to be up for review in 2014. They accelerated it by a year, and they reduced the sanctions, which tells me when Mark Emmert made his cowboy move, went totally outside of NCAA protocol, basically issued these sanctions on his own, devastating sanctions, one of the biggest NCAA cases since the death penalty to SMU in the late 80s, that they overreached on this case, and I think now they're dialing it back. But for Bill O'Brien, for Penn State fans who want to keep Bill O'Brien, it's a great day.
I don't think there's any question, Pat, that it helps Bill O'Brien stay at Penn State. But of all the penalties, all the parts of the penalties, the scholarship limitations was the most significant. So they got the most significant penalty back. Penn State has an elite history, as we all know. They should have an elite future. This probation was going to put their elite future behind, I thought, 10 years. Now they can recruit to 85 a lot sooner. They may not still recruit during this time on an elite level, although Christian Hackenberg is proof that they can, but I don't know that they'll get a bunch of elite players. But just the fact that they can get players, they may beat some MAC schools on players with these numbers. They may beat some lower level Big Ten schools with this revision. What this does is it allows Penn State to come out of this probation and hit the elite recruiting right away.
It's interesting. Bill O'Brien, we heard the clip, and then he was also on a coach's call today, and no gloating from him at all. No 15-yard excessive celebration penalty from him. He was really low-key in terms of how he talked about how this affects recruiting strategy. He was also asked about the potential for lifting the bowl ban. Really didn't say anything about that. So I think he is extremely happy about this, but he's not overselling it. He's going to still say the right things, and hopefully that, for his case, the postseason ban gets lifted.
And guys, when this all came down on Penn State, I think a lot of us, when we started really analyzing all of the different sanctions, we were thinking that this was probably going to affect their depth. As soon as quality players ended up getting injured, that's when we were going to see the performance fall down for Penn State. Now, if you go back and look at their record last year and this year, they're 11-5. I think a lot of people would be very happy with that. And I think now this is another step towards Penn State being able to build quality depth. It's one thing to invite walk-ons into your program that maybe don't have the ability to compete at the Big Ten level. But now this year, with an extra 5 scholarships, they already had 12 commitments as of right now. They can bring in 5 more additional guys that Bill O'Brien and his staff did not think was going to be possible.
Yeah, and first, I'd like to, I appreciate the way Coach O'Brien has handled this. He's been very respectful to the situation with the families involved and everyone else, the way he's come out and spoke about it. The existing leadership there at Penn State has done a good job, and I think that the school has shown contrition. And I think Pat hit it right on the head. This is the NCAA retracting its false teeth. They acted too quickly. They jumped the gun. They went out, and now this is their way of apologizing. They acted a year early. They went out, they're pulling these sanctions back, and you talk about it for the future. Penn State is still Penn State. They're going to get a kid or two. They got Hackenberg. They're going to get a couple kids here and there that are still going to sign with Penn State, restrictions or not. I just think this is the NCAA's way of apologizing to them, but I do appreciate the way that the existing people that are there now in charge have handled the situation. And Coach O'Brien said he told his kids, this is what happens when you do things the right way. Yeah. So that's what he's teaching his kids.
The NCAA is so unpredictable now. I mean, they've made 2 Penn State rulings and 0 rulings on Miami.
Right.
So I mean,
and a Johnny Manziel ruling.
And a quick Johnny Manziel
in 6 hours.
Ruling. Right. Now, one other thing that O'Brien talked about today was, I think this allows them to miss a little bit. So if you only had 15, you could maybe only take 1 offensive tackle, 1 guard. Now you can have more, so if one guy doesn't work out, you're covered.
And I think history tells us that even the most elite recruiting classes miss. I know you'd agree with that too, Jerry. Right. It's impossible to hit 100% on your recruiting classes. Pat, Teddy had briefly mentioned the possibility of lifting the bowl ban. Do you feel like that's the next step here?
Yeah, I think that there's an excellent chance. Given what progress Penn State has already made, they certainly seem to have made a believer out of George Mitchell, who was the independent integrity monitor. And if they're still making progress next year at this time, he can come back and recommend another reduction in sanctions. And it would not shock me if in 2014 Penn State finds itself going bowling. If we're in the same situation next year and we're talking about a bowl ban being lifted 2 years early, and that would be another significant gain, and probably something that Bill O'Brien, as Teddy said, he's been cautious about this, but he could cautiously tell recruits, hey, there's a chance we're playing in a good bowl game next year. Come on aboard.
I want to follow up on that point. They've given Penn State now a blueprint to recruit. Now they know what to tell the kids. They know what to go into the household. They know exactly what to tell the kids and tell the parents. This is when everything will be back to normal. This is where we'll be when your son's a sophomore or junior. If your son's a junior in high school, this is where we'll be when he steps on campus his freshman year in 2 years at Penn State. So now it gives them a blueprint now to go out and recruit. They know what to tell prospective student athletes, and I think that now they can actually lay out a plan to get things back to normal.
Before this probation hit Penn State, Bill O'Brien's recruiting class was in the top 5 in the country. I mean, he was killing it in recruiting. He's done everything else right on the field. I mean, we've seen him coach. He was recruiting at the same level. We just never got to see it because once the probation came, his class kind of fell apart. So he's going to get back to recruiting on an elite level much sooner with this revision than he was without the revision. He's proven he can recruit.
And of course, it's going to be tough now. I mean, a lot of schools have already filled out the bulk of their classes. There are probably some kids out there they wish they would have had a scholarship for or would have thought that scholarship be available. Go ahead, Jerry.
Until they sign, Coach.
I hear you. I just think it's going to
go after the kids that are committed to other schools.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, whether or not they will, for sure, who knows? But I mean, in theory, that's the way you go about doing it. But I'm just saying it's tough. You're behind the 8 ball a little bit, but for next year, now they're set.
Until that fax rolls through.